Hello again, whiskey friends. Thanks for joining everybody for another Tuesday discussion. Here on Tuesdays, we do like to give video responses to questions or comments we're either getting on Instagram, YouTube, or from our wonderful Patreon community. Thank you so much for your support, and we love you all. Now, for today's video, I did get a question about what is in my top 10 list of the year. At the end of every review, I do give a up-to-date ranking on where that current bottle ranks in terms of all the reviews done in 2024. Now, if you're in our Patreon, you have access to that Google Sheet. You can go see my top 10 list, Darrell's top 10 list, Kelsey's top 10 list. You can even see the stuff we don't even talk about, because we just review whiskeys all week long. It's what we enjoy doing. Now, for the top 10 list today, I am quite excited to go over this. We only have 3 months left in the year as of recording. That is not a lot of time for any major shakeups on this list. If anything new actually enters this list, I'll consider myself lucky, because this list as it stands today is better than what it was in 2023. This has been one heck of a year for whiskey. I know some people don't feel that way, maybe because some of the heritage brands haven't released their big stuff quite yet, or some of the big releases haven't quite hit. But on this channel, we search high and low across all brands for special whiskey, and I'm going to highlight 10 great bottles for you today. So thank you for joining today, whiskey friends. Let's kick off the show. Man, just like in most Tuesday videos, I do like to have a pour with everybody. And this particular pour, I can't wait to talk about here. This nose is absolutely phenomenal. That's like a whiskey. I'm going to let that open up there before I even take a sip of it. But it's one of those whiskeys where every time I nose it, I'm like, how are you so good? So what we're going to highlight first as we get through the top 10 is going to be a bottle picked from our friends over at Nerds and Turds. So cheers to Trev, David, and Kira. I'm going to keep raving about this bottle, though I gotta say, it's getting close to getting knocked out of the top 10. It's only one bottle away here. But what we have is the American Whiskey 16-year from Bull Run. Now, I am a big fan of light whiskey, especially when you get up into age statements this high. I have been talking about light whiskey for years on this channel, trying to tell people that they should be grabbing these when they can for the price, especially when they're finished. There is not a better deal on the market. Of course, don't overspend for light whiskey either. As you can see on the screen, this one was $47. Now, that is atypical, especially for something that was aged finished in Pinot Cask for another 12 months. Way to go to Nerds and Turds for bringing us a bottle at that price. That is absolutely phenomenal. Best sub $50 bottle I've had in quite some time. This one is actually unopened because thus far I've gone through 2 of these. Luckily for me, I bought 5. So then moving on to the next one here, another brand that I've really fallen in love with over the last year. Maybe I was late to the game on this, but people have spoiled me with either samples, or now that different groups around the community are getting into picks, I've gotten my hands on 4 or 5 single barrels of Middle West Pumpernickel rye. Even got the chance to do a single barrel pick with Jason and Scott from the Mash and Journey just a few months ago. I think that one's going to drop like any week now. But my favorite so far has been this pick from Two Bros, One Bottle. Absolutely phenomenal single barrel. This one sticks out from the 5 that I was mentioning earlier. there is just a brightness to the fruits and an effervescence of it that I don't get on the other single barrels that I really, really enjoy. Makes me smile each time. Can't wait to compare the Mash and Journey pick to this one, just to see if even the pick that I had my own hands in might actually live up to the one that is on my top 10. Fabulous, fabulous pick. And even though I am highlighting some single barrels here, what I do want you to take away from this list as we go through this is more the brands and the fact that I'm trying to tell you that I have lots of hitter single barrels from this brand in different groups. So don't sleep on other groups that are doing these picks. While this is my favorite, that doesn't mean that this one would be your favorite. I'm trying to highlight brands to you, though, right now that are really popping from a single barrel standpoint. Next, we have the Obtainium single barrel bourbon. Talk about another special deal. Thanks to Bourbon, I got my hands on another one of the barrels in this family. But the one that I'm going to highlight here is one of these stubby ones. Now, this is an Obtainium. This is Obtainium, specifically a straight bourbon whiskey, if you see these. Now, this is an 11-year MGP bourbon, 36% rye. And oh my gosh, for $85, these things are absolutely phenomenal. Gene over there at Cat's Eye always keeps the prices legit. And there are just some interesting barrels floating around the community right now that some can get their hands on and then get it into the hands of us whiskey fans at an affordable price as well. Come on, $85 for an 11-year MGP single barrel. It wasn't too long ago that people were asking, gosh, twice this amount, 3 times this amount for double-digit age statements on MGP. Oh, man. Moving on to the next one of the list. This was actually one of the first whiskeys that I fell in love with in 2024, and it still is awesome right now. Very similarly, though. So this is coming from another company in Columbus, Ohio. Middle West is in Columbus, Ohio as well. Now, with the Whiskey War Double Double coming from High Bank, this is a blend of MGP ryes and bourbons that was then finished in New Oak not once, but twice, thus the Double Double name. For me, all up front is a rye with all these great tropical flavors that I get quite a bit from a double oaked rye. But then on the back end, it finishes like a fabulous dark bourbon. You know, the rye part of it just kind of molds away, and I'll hit you with all those like dark bourbon notes. Lovely, lovely blend on top of the fact that it was, double oak twice. Also got a chance to do a single barrel of this with Jason and Scott at the Mash and Journey that same day on Middle West. Can't wait for that one to come out. But I'm interested to then compare it to the blend. Can the single barrel live up to the blend? That's going to be a fun blind later. Now we have the one that's actually in my whiskey glass. This is Copper and Cask 9-year small batch. This is a brand that's also sourcing MGP, though uniquely had some of their barrels aging in Florida. That seems to be the special sauce for them. It's so interesting sometimes with some of these brands. It's where those barrels are aging can actually do something unique, even though all these brands are sourcing MGP bourbon. Something like location could be the thing that makes it stick out or brings that extra character. And as I noted off the top, the nose on this thing is absolutely phenomenal. I would compare this 9-year blend to that 11-year single barrel from Obtainium that I was highlighting earlier. Darrell actually got me a sample of this after he was raving about it in a recent review. And immediately I was like, can you please pick me up a bottle of that? I'd really appreciate you. And he came through. So it can be on my top 10 too. Let's get a sip. I am quite parched. Oh my gosh. Just the dark, rich goodness, the fruits that pop. It's still got the honey and the graham cracker that I love. Comes across a lot older than 9 years, by the way. Like I would have guessed like 11 or 12 years on this thing. Do not sleep on this bottle if it's in your area, especially for $77. Holy crap, that is a really good bottle, specifically the 9-year small batch. I sat there and talked. I don't even think I showed the label, but this is what it looks like here. Copper and Cask. Oh, Durrell, thank you so much for bringing this brand into our life. Man, such phenomenal whiskey that they have gotten their hands on. Next up is going to be a series that I've been following since 2019. One of the last remaining kind of series ongoing batches where I'm like, I'm going to get every single release of that. We're talking about the 4-Gate Kelvin collaboration batch 6. Now, what makes this one unique is that it was finished in both Madeira casks, which is a first for the series, and then dark rum casks. So those two finishes, the Madeira and the dark rum, oh man, they play together so well. On top of it, the underlying bourbons are a blend of different 9-year barrels from different distilleries. On top of that, oh my gosh, what a good blend. And then the finishing on top of that is completely on point. Continues to live up to the expectations I have for the Kelvin collaboration series. Love this one. I know this one is the priciest of the list, but if you're looking for a very nice gift or something to stick behind on a special occasion, this is a good one. Now we got 4 left here. Now we are on to the Ben Holladay. I've actually not talked about this one publicly in any video, which I thought was strange when I was actually putting these slides together. But this is a pick from the Mashing Journey, and Kelsey was actually on this pick. Now, the one that I absolutely adore is the soft red wheat. When these got delivered to the house, Kelsey was like kind of poking me like, oh, what do you think of those bottles? What do you think of those bottles? But he really wanted to know what I think about the regular bourbon. But as soon as I cracked these open, I just fell in love with the soft red wheat, and I just wanted to only talk about that one. He's like, "Well, go back to the bourbon." I was like, "Yeah, but I just want to talk about this one. This one's fabulous." But I think I've been trying to think about this one. I'll have to look it up on the sheet. I think this might be my favorite wheated bourbon in maybe 2 or 3 years on top of everything else. I'll look that up though. But don't sleep on these Ben Holladays. I know Ben Holladay is getting a lot of hype in our community. As these picks go around, don't sleep on those. They are absolutely fabulous. And the bourbon, the regular bourbon, not the wheated bourbon, that one's also fabulous as well. It graded a little bit outside of my top 10, but man, still really good whiskey, especially for the price. Whew. But this soft red wheat, if you get a chance for a single barrel of that one, do not sleep on that. Next up, oh man, the year of the rye 2024. And this one probably just cements that in my head. By the way, there is no other straight bourbons on this list. We are either talking ryes or we are talking Bourase. The first one that we have up here is the Hard Truth. This is the Master Distillers Reserve Sweet Mash Rye 2024 blend. So going back to even the last 2 years, Hard Truth has a mash bill called the Caramel Malt. And when I tasted batch 1, I thought, wow, this could be phenomenal someday. It's only like 2 or 3 years old, but someday this is going to be great. Batch 2 then carried forward that trajectory. Though even with batch 2, we had it in our end of year tournament last year. Kelsey is the one that nominated that one. And it did well, but I never felt that it had maybe the depth or the complexity. As delicious as it is, I just thought it was lacking something. Now, never in my thought process did I think that Hard Truth was going to take that caramel malt and blend it with their other mash bills, being the chocolate rye and the malted rye. And all of those components together would fill out all of the gaps that I was picturing in my head and make this beautiful whiskey that just fires on all of these different angles with the fruit, with the sweetness. I mean, the main note that I get on this one is essentially a donut filled with custard, covered in either a butterscotch cream or a caramel cream, whichever one suits your fancy. I mean, that's a pretty good note to get on a whiskey. So, man, Hard Truth back in my top 10 here, and man, solidified in the top 3 with this 2024 blend. Absolutely phenomenal. Next up on the list is a Traverse City almost 11-year single barrel rye. This one was sourced from MGP, and man, such a phenomenal bottle. Now, while I'm highlighting this particular single barrel because it graded so high for me, do not take that away that I'm really only talking about this single barrel. There are other MGP 95.5 rye, double-digit ryes floating around there that people are raving about, getting their hands on. Hunt these things down. As an example, one of them that is in my area right now is a pick from Revival in Covington, Kentucky. They have an OKI 11-year. They're selling it for like $90. Oh my gosh. It's the same family of barrels, I think. And it's absolutely phenomenal. Other brands that I've seen people posting about this year are things like River Roots, if you've seen pictures of those. Other phenomenal MGP rye that is going around. You know, unfortunately, when we have the bourbon market and the whiskey market going the way it is, some people have to sell off their barrels. And I feel like some people are selling off some phenomenal barrels that they've held on for some time because they want to get some cash flow. And other brands are then able to take advantage of that and put it in the hands of us whiskey connoisseurs. So when I say that I love this Traverse City, just note what I'm really saying is, if you find brands that have their hands on double-digit MGP rye right now and they're not charging an arm and a leg for it, don't be afraid of that one. It is probably a fabulous, fabulous whiskey. Now, let's get to the final bottle on this list. I know I've been talking for a long time. Thank you for sticking with me through this, everybody. We have the Bardstown Bourbon Company Am Root. Now, this is my favorite bottle of the year thus far. It is going to be a hard one to beat in my book. This is a Boo Rye, so it is a blend of both ryes and bourbons. Now, the rye portion of this blend was finished in single malt casks from Amroot, thus why it fits in this collaboration series. Now, the bourbon was unfinished. They just used it for blending purposes. But even the bourbons that are in this blend are like 14-year, what looks like Wild Turkey, and then 2 10-year Kentucky bourbons as well. So some fabulous bourbons to lend this thing a whole lot of depth and flavor. Every time I take a sip or sniff of this thing, I get something else from this bottle. It is an endless treasure trove of a whiskey. Oh my gosh, do I love this whiskey. So this one's still sitting on shelves in places. Do not sleep on this. Once again, I know this one is one of the pricier ones on the list, but still a very, very special pour, especially if you're into the exploration of whiskey, something that's a Boo Rye that was finished in a single malt cask. That doesn't happen very often, if it'll happen again. So that concludes the list that I have for you today. Some things to take away from this list. Only 3 of the bottles that I listed here, being the Traverse City, the Amroot, and the Foregate, were over $100. One of them was even under $50. But one of the main things that I have learned thus far in 2024 is that you do not have to spend an arm and a leg, triple digits, for special whiskey these days. There are so many brands and it is getting so competitive out there that this price point, say between $70 to $100, $70 to $99, killer whiskey exists in that space. and it exists from brands that you may not have heard before. So let me know in the comments, which of these have you had? Which of these have you loved? Which of these are new brands that you haven't tried yet? And have I convinced you that you need to try them? So thank you for joining today, Whiskey Friends. If you have any questions or comments, let us know in the comments. We'll get there for a future video, and we'll catch you on the next Tuesday discussion. Goodbye, everybody.